All right, now everybody knows that recording's in progress and nobody will say anything untoward in Mitzvah Shem. Okay, so here we have Torah Samach, which is a very complex Torah, and like all the Torahs of Rabbeinu, like all the Torahs of Rabbeinu, we learned it the last time when we were here. The Torah is basically constructed back to front, if you remember that. Meaning that Rabbeinu starts usually with a pasuk or a certain saying. In this case, Rabbeinu is starting with a mamar from the Ida Kadisha. Shem Baruch Chai is telling, his son Rebbe Lazar and his Talmud Rabbi Abba, and he says that he puts his son on the right side, his Talmud on the left side, and says we are the klolos, the totality of everybody put together. And this has to do with the fact that it's a very deep secret in the very beginning, before the creation of the world as we know it, that before the shattering, the world was created in such a way that spheres of the 7 midos from Chesed to the Malchus were constructed in a single file, one on top of the other. It was Chesed on top, and then the Gvura underneath it, and Tiferes underneath that, and so forth and so on until the Malchus. And because of that, there was no reciprocity between the spheres. Each one was either above the other or beneath the other. So they had nothing to do with one another. It's like, come on, I mean, me to talk with you, come on. So now when the light of Kodesh Baruch Hu, shown it in the light of Kodesh Baruch Hu has all the spheres together, they shattered. Yes. So they shattered. And when they shattered, the Kalim, the shards fell from Olam Atzilus, from the Malchus of Olam Atzilus. They fell into the Bina, Sabrina, in Olam Abriya, and the light that used to fill them retreated back, but it didn't retreat back all the way to its source, which is Chochmah Bina de Atzilus. It just retreated to the Yesod of that Atzilus, which means it's one step above the Malchus, everything shattered. The reason for it is because it had the light retreated all the way, the mitzvahs of the kedusha, the holy sparks, would be lost forever. They need to have the light of Kodesh Baruch Hu, the light of through the Yesod, through the tzaddik, has to be close enough to keep an eye on them and help them when they need, while they're getting the tikkun. And in the beginning of Olam HaTikkun, then the spheres, realigned in a way where they had interrelationship between them. So all the spheres were marked down in 3 lines, where you have the Chesed, the Chochmah, and the Chesed and the Netzach were all representing the right side, and you had the Bina and the Gvura and the Hod representing the Gvura side, the left side. Then you have the Keser, the Das, the Tiferes, the Yesod, which represent the middle. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said to the Talmidim, I'm sitting here in the middle. He represents the Keser, the Atika Kadisha, and his son, Rebbe Lozer, represents the right side, the Chochmah, and his student, which is Rabbi Abba, represents the left side. And he says, being like that, we are the totality of everything. And he says, until now, the world existed on one column, but now that in the very beginning, he says that he started with a pasuk that says, "Es asot Hashem efero torasecha," that it's time to do something for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So as a result of that, people did something which is against the Torah. In other words, sometimes in case of emergency, break glass. You have to do something, that the period calls for, like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi writing the Mishnayos. We know that you're not allowed to write Torah Shabbal Peh, so he wrote in such a way that still, yes, the Mishnayos are written, but really what they mean and how you actually learn the halacha from it is still only time you can receive verbally. And then the generations even went down, had to put the Shakla Vetaria also, down on paper because people didn't know how to learn Mishnayos either. So they put down the Gemara, they put down Ravashi and Ravina. They put together Talmud Bavli, and so supposedly now Torah Shabbal Peh was written down. But truth be told, anybody who has ever learned Gemara knows that you still don't know anything. I mean, yeah, now you know how to deal with different sugyas of the Gemara, but there's still Torah Shabbal Peh. You still have to learn from your Rebbe, and then you had the Rishonim, whatever it is. All the time they explain more and more and more. Supposedly the Torah Shabbal Peh, is written down, which is against the dictum, but they still leave a certain, at the very end, you still need, to hear verbally, in order to know what actually is going on. So Rabbeinu says that this inyan of Atika Kadisha that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is talking there, it says that this is the inyan of being able to learn the Torah in such a deep fashion that you'll be able to be masig, asagas, and shvilim and lanes in the Torah. That the Nusa says it's not possible to attain those unless you have an immense wealth, the kedusha. And then the Torah starts going down that basically it's reverse engineering. In other words, he says that the tachlis is to learn and be able to understand that tfunas HaTorah la'amka, deeply to reflect and to understand these. And he says, in order to get this, first of all, you have to have this wealth. That's why Rabbeinu Kodesh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, was extremely wealthy. Moshe Rabbeinu was extremely wealthy. All the Nevi'im were extremely wealthy. Rav Ashi was extremely wealthy. All those that the entire Torah came through, they were extremely wealthy because they needed this kind of insight, how to write the Torah in such a way, to bring it in such a way that it will include everything, and whatever it is that still needs to be learned, is also included in them in a hidden way. That takes obviously a mind which is basically infinite. For that, you need an infinite amount, almost of ashiras, of wealth. And then there's a stage before it. How do you get this kind of wealth? Usually when people get rich, they don't, it doesn't lead them, to great insight in Torah. Usually it leads them to great insight in formula racing or building yachts. It doesn't, it's not auspicious to, anyhow. So basically the right order is to go from the end to the front. It comes through when you are doing, you're untying the mouth of people who are sleeping their lives, who are mute, and untying the mouth of barren women so they're able to give birth. That brings about a great amount of yira in the world. That yira, in turn, enables you to get what they call arichos yomim, longevity of days, which is the receptacle of the ashiras. And Yitz Hashem Yotzorek, this is the yira, is that receptacle, that wallet, and that enables you to enlarge your days all the time in additional kedusha. And when you add your days in additional kedusha, you're zerchet to this ashiras, you're zerchet to this ashiras, you're zerchet to tvunos Torah. This is what the Torah is basically built on. But when Rabbeinu told the Torah, it's built, from the end to the beginning. Starting with ashiras, he says, but you can't get ashiras unless you're on larger days. You're adding kedusha every day. And in order to get the ashiras, you need a keli, you need a vessel, you need a large bank account, you need a large wallet, which is the yira. And the yira you get by awakening people who were asleep their lives, who were until now, were mum. They were like deaf. I mean, yes, the Rebbeinu says they were learning, they were davening, whatever it is. People thought they were learning and davening. But the truth is they're basically sleepwalking, they're zombies. It can be great lamdonim, but nevertheless, it's without the heart. It's not connected to the seichel. Which means the Kodesh Baruch Hu has no nachas ruach from it. If he has no nachas ruach from it, it says that the Torah does not go up, the tefillah does not go up. What does it mean? Doesn't go up? Kodesh Baruch Hu needs, this cottage cheese, cup with a string, and the cottage cheese on one side, and then you can talk. Kodesh Baruch Hu hears you wherever you are. What do you mean tefillah doesn't go up? The answer is that yes, the Kodesh Baruch Hu hears you. And Baruch Hashem, what you're doing is wonderful. But your job is more than just to speak to Kodesh Baruch Hu and get things done for yourself. Your job is to bring affluence to all the Olam Esalyonim. And when you are sleepwalking through your learning and sleepwalking through your davening, that ain't happening. You bring it a little bit to yourself, but you're not giving sustenance to the Olam Esalyonim. That doesn't happen. In order for this to happen, you need to awaken the people up through ponim of the Torah, and there are 70 faces to the Torah, 70 facets to the Torah. And it says once you get, he wakens up these people, so suddenly, because until then they're deaf, until then they're mute. Stam cherish, a person who is deaf, a regular deaf person from birth, never heard anybody talk ever, so he's not able to talk. So stam cherish eino medaber. There's halachic ramifications to that. He's considered he's not bardas, he doesn't have a das. So when somebody is sleepwalking his life, he is Baruch Hashem, he's from, everything's okay, but he's deaf and mute. And the tzaddik awakens, he has to have episa, shaychus, episa, an impetus. He wants to wake up, but he's unable to wake up. So once he wants to wake up, the tzaddik already shines upon him either a Torah or Sipura Maisias. He enwraps that face, that seichel, that person needs to connect to in a piece of Torah, of a lower Torah, a little hard, whatever, or you hear, a Sipura Maisias, and in it is embedded and cloaked a higher ponem of Torah that person needs to hear. And then he starts hearing. Then he starts talking. Then he starts talking to Kodesh Baruch Hu. And when he starts talking, it's like a balloon to a puncture by a needle. All the diburim come out with great strength, and that brings in tremendous diburim. These diburim, that's in itself is a whole mechanism. Diburim come to those we call them the trusters of the generation, the people who have bitochen in generations, batchanei ador, and from them becomes a haloda that barren women start giving birth. because the Batchanei Ador Batucha is, this is the Hebrew word for what the modern word is klayot, is kidneys. Kidneys are part of their, like the original, the very beginning part of their reproductive system. And people don't realize that. They only realize that people who have kidney problems, la aleinu, are for some reason cannot have children. That's the only thing the medical community does know. But that it has anything to do with reproductive, what's the kesher? I mean, it's like But anyhow, so once the dibur, the koyach gets a batchanei ador can already give it over, and the barren women can give birth. Great gvura, get yira, is being discovered, and the process starts. Yira brings about longevity. Longevity brings to a shirus. Shirus brings to depth, in-depth vision of the Torah. So as we say, it's because, and the reason, first of all, it has to come through the people who are woken up, when they start to speak. And then it goes through Batchanei Ador, what you call the spiritual kidneys of the generation, enabling, birthing of newer generation. He says in Kabbalah there are, two stages. It's called zivug anashikin. That's the conjugation of the kissing. And then there's zivug agufni. That's the physical conjugation. Whenever we're talking about the midas aliynis, the tzaddikim, the yichudim, zivugim of midas aliynis, which means that two midas come together and they give to one another. And as a result of this coming together, each one of them becomes richer and more, something is added to it from the coming together they did with the other midah. That's the reason why in the very beginning, before Olam Shvira, there was a situation where the world shattered because there was no give and take between the spheres. There's no give and take. There's no zivug. There was no yichud because there was no repercussion. There wasn't panim bepanim. There wasn't face to face. So once there's a face to face, then this can bring about the progeny in this world. And this is what Rabbeinu says, and it says, so first of all, we come through the koyach hadibur, when those who are asleep, are awakened up, this is a representation of the conjugation of the nishikin, then becomes a zivug gufni that brings about hatir pe akoris. Rabbeinu says as follows: the noise that all of you hear is the opening of potato chips. This is Pesach. Usually, the olam here gets popcorn. So popcorn would be kitnias, and the olam wouldn't use that. So this is what is going on. This rustling sound here in the background is the opening of the potato chip. Okay. And it says, this is the breaking of klei cheres, of earthenware, that are usually broken down or shattered when people are betrothed to one another, and that it used to be in the time of the Mishnah and before, the Erusin, which is the Kiddushin, and the Chuppah were actually two separate processes that took time. They were apart, sometimes 6 months, sometimes a whole year. So the chassan would go to the house of the father of his kala, and they would do kiddushin, and midoraisa, she was already considered his wife. And then he would leave, he would go back to where his place is, and he was building. It would be the house, he would prepare everything for the chasana, and when it would be ready, her father would either bring her or will send her with emissaries, to the chassan, and then the chassan would take her into the chuppah, and then she becomes his wife, the whole dollar. Now, the thing is that Chachamim saw that this brought about some very serious problems, because when there is 6 months to a year in which they have not seen one another, if Chas v'Chalila something should happen, and this woman is being nichshel with another man, she's oiven yisor v'eses ish. By the way, the biggest example of such a snafu is Yoshke Pondrik. This is exactly what happened with him. Yoshke Pondrik, never heard of him? Anyhow, Yoshke was Yoshke Pondrik, yeah. Anyhow, so what happened was that the claim, this had nothing to do with the men, this is just immaculate conception, blah blah blah, whatever. Truth of the matter was that Rebbe Akiva and Rabbi Yossi, and I think Rabbi Yehuda, I'm not sure, was sitting in the market, and this one, and he passed. Yoshke passed. He was the Talmud of Yeshua ben Prachia. And when they saw him, I don't know if Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Yehuda, one of them said, this person is a mamzer. And the other one said, no, he is a ben Nida. And Rabbi Akiva said, he's both. And Chacham says, no. One of them saw mamzer, not ben Nida. One of them saw ben Nida, not a mamzer. Rabbi Akiva saw, no, it's both. How do you have proof? So he went to his mother. This is, by the way, the part that all the censors always cut out of the Gemara. All the Talmud that used to be in Europe used to cut it off, And he went to his mother, and he told her, "Now I want you to reveal the truth to me." Rabbi Akiva went to Yoshke's mother, that they all daven to, the goyim daven to, so he went to her, and he told her, "Now you're going to tell me the truth, and if you don't, I'm going to condemn you to the lowest level of purgatory, and you're never ever going to come out." Now, when Akiva said that, you take it very seriously. So she said she will tell him the truth if he would swear to her that he would save her from Din of Gehenna altogether. So Akiva said he swore to her in his mouth, and his heart was mevatel. He didn't mean it. It was a shayach to drink poison and he won't die. It was just shtissen. But then she told him. The story is exactly that. Her husband, Yosef, the carpenter, he went over. He was mekadesh her, and when the time for Nisuim came, her father sent her with 2 emissaries, and on the way, they stopped at an inn, And whatever happened, happened. And this is when the Immaculate Conception happened. It wasn't so immaculate. But nevertheless, I mean, she's not going to say that anything happened. She came to her husband, nothing happened, of course, and this, it's all HaKadosh, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so today, we no longer do it in two processes. There's no longer one stage of Kiddushin, and then another stage of Nisuin, of Chuppah, but we do it all in one process. During the Kiddushin, the ring, and everything is done, and together with the Nisuin, with the Ksuba, and everything is done in one shot. There'll be no problems, and then she's in his house, there's Baruch Hashem, chances are that things are going to be okay. But nevertheless, when they decide to make, to get married, it still takes some time to arrange things, So they no longer make Kiddushin. What they do is they maybe Heskem Iskashrus, an agreement of connection. In Yiddish called a vort, they're making a vort. In the Makpid, not to call it Erusin, not to call it, a lotion of Kiddushin. They're making a vort. And during the vort, during the chasana, the chassan breaks a glass. During the vort, what they do is they don't break a glass, but they break a plate. And the plate is an earthenware plate made of cheres. And they break it. And Rabbeinu mentions this in a few terms of Likutey Moharan. When they break it, so he talks about the sparks that come out from an earthenware which is being broken and so forth. Here he talks about this in v'zeh, Pchinas, Shviras, Klei, the breaking of earthenware, Shishar Mishasa Iskashrus as Zivugim, that that are being broken during the time of the connection of the Zivugim, the Hoiros, to show, to allude to, Sheachshav Shenasa Iskashrus, now that there is the connection of man and wife, even though it's not Kiddushin, but nevertheless it is Kiddushin. Shahu Bishvilo Iloda, this is for the sake of giving birth. The thing is, people get married for many reasons. They can fall into a great and grave mistake. They feel, that they're very unhappy as being Bachrim, and they feel that, once they get married, that problem will be solved. Little do they know that when they get married, they add problems to the problem they already have. But so, in order to get married, to get a higher quality of life, people usually have a very rude awakening when that happens. If a person wants to have a good marriage, what needs to be done is that the kavanah, the main purpose of getting married, is to have children, to create the new generation of Yidden in the world, because every Yid in the world is galus alakus, is godliness with every single breath that he takes. That is the goal, should be the goal of everybody who gets married. It says because the purpose thereof is to give birth, is to progenate. Giving birth is creation, recreation is a bechina of trust, of bitochen, bchinas kloyes, as we said before. In order to have children, this is the reproductive system, which begins with the kidneys, the kloyes, has to be the way it's supposed to be. Shem kloya loda, the kloyes is kloya loda, is the tools of giving birth. V'zeh bechinas, it says in Mishlei, botach bo lev ba'alo. It means that the skashrus of the man and the woman is for birthing the next generation, which is the bechinas betochen, botach bo, the trust is in her, the heart of her husband. So, in other words, the goal is to have bitochen, and the bitochen is to have children. To have children. It's bitachon. Bitachon b'Shem. When you have bitachon b'Shem, how are you going to give parnasa to 10 children? Because Baruch Hu will give. All these charedim, they have all these 7 children, they have 10 children. They're so irresponsible. They're irresponsible. You with a kid and a half and a dog, it's like what are you talking about? This is bitachon. You don't have bitachon. Bitachon is a person who's worried what I'm going to have. If I'm going to have enough. I'm not going to have. In fact, this holy now is Chol Hamoed Pesach. This is the right time to speak about it. Nosson speaks about in Likutey Halachos about of Pesach. This is bitachon. Everybody knows the story of Moshke and the Puritz, the fear Lord. Moshke, a story, the classic story of Moshke, a Jew, and the fear Lord, the Puritz. You heard that gazillion times in different versions. That the Puritz, leases out an inn, and then he doesn't have enough, he doesn't make money, then he has to renew the lease, and he still owes money for the previous year, and the next year he's still losing money, and his debt becomes even greater. And the Puritz, in his great generosity, gives him a loan. He holds the previous debt as a loan in unbelievable interest, which in America they call VIG, right? This is what they call the VIG. In loan sharks, they call it. What? Shylock. Yeah, Shylock. It's like a real heavy interest. And the thing is that the Yid continues and he ends up in jail, whatever it is, and Kamet Tzaddik, whatever it is, the story is with Pidim Shvui, whatever it is, how the story goes. I'm sure you had such marshals gazillion times before. Anyhow, the point is that this is the life of Chosar Bitochen. Paroi in Mitzrayim was exactly that. He came in with perach, with a soft mouth, and it says, it says it started with perach, he came speaking softly, I'm best friend, we're going to give you the best conditions, come work for me, whatever it is, I'll give you straw, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, I'll come work with you, whatever it is. And it ended up perach in the bitterest, the deepest muck you can possibly get into. And not only then, but you can never get out of it. Because the vig is so high, the interest is so high, you can never actually pay it back. And life becomes, I'll just finish the quota for the day. We have this Maisa, he says, I'll just finish the quota for the day. And the Egyptian will be happy and will leave me alone. But the next day, there's a new quota. And again, it becomes running off the quota. But the thing is, and it's a quota that will never end. And this kind of I'll only finish this, I'll be done with it, continued for 210 bitter years in Mitzrayim. Because the Ruach of the Mitzrayim, the Ruach of the Mitzrayim is Ruach Se'ora, it's a storm wind. Strength, now. And the Ruach Se'ora is very great when it's blowing. But it fades away very quickly. And this is what Rabbeinu writes in Torah Ches, that when a Yid sighs, he reaches the end of the line, the end of his rope, and he sighs deeply from the bottom of his heart. What is happening to me? I'm locked in the life of this world, which is all about bitochen the sitra achra. Maybe I won't have. Maybe I won't have enough. Maybe this will happen. And who knows what's going to happen next year? And who knows what's going to happen the next day? And finally you realize that you're running behind your tail because there's never enough. This is a Ruach Se'ora that never works out. So Yanchu Bnei Yisrael min ha'avodo, Am Yisrael sighed from the depth of the avodo, and the Rabbeinu said in Torah Ches, when a Yid sighs from the depth of his heart, he gets Ruach Chaim from the Tzaddik, this Ruach Chaim brings him a whole different kind of Ruach. It's a Ruach which is bitochen, the Kedusha. Bitochen, the Kedusha doesn't tie him into life of luxury. If I have the luxury, then I'll be able to do this. I'll be able to have that. I'll be able to appease my wife. I'll be able to do this. No, I'll be happy. People won't see that I'm a schnorrer and whatever it is. That look, I have this and I have that, and I can do this and I can do that, and then a fancy car and after this, and clothes and this and that, and jewelry and only to end up in the hole in the ground by the Puritz somewhere in the end of the village, whatever. You understand what the thing is, when a person sighs, he gets a bitochon the kedusha, and then the Kodesh Baruch Hu, then this is when the Geula starts. When you have a new ruach chadosha b'kirvechem, this is when the Geula starts. This is what we said. Botach v'lev ba'alo, the v'nishbar v'nisbatal. The first of all, we're getting bitochon the kedusha. Mimela deizeh nisbatal v'nishbar b'chinas bitochon sitra achra. The bitochon sitra achra, the bitochon of olam hazeh, the bitochon of Mitzrayim, the bitochon of I'll just finish this and I'll be done. I'll just make my first. I'm going to make $1 million, and then I'm just going to sit down and learn in Köln. I said, yeah, but making $1 million is very hard. Okay, I'll start from my second $1 million, because the first $1 million is harder than the second $1 million. So I'll start from the second $1 million. Whatever the saying goes. Because that the bitochon or tzad of the tumah, the person does not trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person trusts other things, either luck or koichi v'otzim yodi and so forth. This is why they're breaking earthenware. Because when the prophet Shaya is admonishing Am Yisrael, you're trusting in what? In robbery and in usury. And it is being broken like a tool of artisans. And in other words, you don't trust the Kodesh Baruch Hu. You trust in the Mitzrim. You are giving them shaychad. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to break you like clay cheres, like earthenware, that are being broken into small pieces in order to be making offer from it, sand from it. Bitochen the Sitra Achra is the breaking of clay cheres, the breaking of earthenware. That's why when there is a vort, they are breaking the kli cheres when they're making these kashus, which is the breaking the kli cheres. That's bitochen the kedusha, to show that the pchinas bitochen the sitra achra has been broken. Kia bitochen the kedusha, says Rabbeinu, shenasel deis kashus, that is being formed through that couple connected. Ulehefech ma bitochen the sitra achra is the opposite of the sitra achra. The bitochen sitra achra is the breaking kleches. And also, the Meir says, there's an additional hint over here.
Isn't that what they do? They break the kli cheres.
Right. The kli cheres represents bitochen sitra achra. So when you break it, means that you're breaking bitochen sitra achra and you're building the bitochen the kedusha. That's why they're doing it. And
the other cheres was a reminder of Gianom.
Yeah. And here he says that he mentions, Rabbeinu mentions this in a few terms. He says, and also they're alluding to them, if they won't behave, b'kedusha v'yivgedu, and they will betray chas v'shalom, they will cheat chas v'shalom, b'pchinas habitochen, they will cheat the pchinas habitochen, they will betray the pchinas of the bitochen, the kedusha, b'pchinas soilada, in this Indian has to do with giving birth. In that Indian, there will be a bechina of broken earthenware. Shvias klecheres. The miftach boiged. That's the trust of somebody who is a betrayer, somebody who is a cheater. Because when a person trusts a Sitra Achra, that comes through the bechina of klecheres. Now the Daf Yomi has been is Maseches Soita. That's the Maseches now that the Olam is learning. and what's happening, what's the process is going on with the Indian of bitochen the kedusha and bitochen sitra achra. Nothing in the world ever represents it more. You know, bitochen the sitra achra than the Indian of law lady of Saita. Saita is a woman, married woman, that went with another man, that her husband was mekana her and told her, do not be alone with a certain person. And she went ahead and she did it, and they're being brought to Yerushalayim and whatever it is, and this whole Indian. There's nothing, absolutely nothing in the world that is more bitter than when the betrayal happens in this particular Indian. In fact, there's never been, at least that I know, a single case, even by Goyim, a single case when a person has betrayed in this particular Indian, according to what the minig of that particular nation is at that particular point in time. The English, for instance, in the 60s, 50s, whatever, they didn't mean anything, whatever it is. But nevertheless, and people call red-handed, as it were, always crashed. Especially being Yiddishkeit, forget about it. Nobody ever builds himself up again. There's no way.
Say this again.
People are caught.
You said 50s or 60s.
No, I'm saying it's probably the same thing today, but I'm saying it used to be in England, it used to be during the war, whatever it is, marriage didn't mean anything to them, whatever it is. I mean, they go, yeah. The Great Britain of the time, whatever. So it doesn't matter. You're too young. Early 60s, perfume or affair, remember that? Okay, forget about it. It happened because even there, that where loyalty and whatever. Did you ever hear about the perfume affair in 1962? Was it like that? Big. Was a minister in England, whatever it is, that did whatever he did, whatever it is, it became all over the tabloids, whatever, and the whole government fell down. Even by the Goyim, that by them loyalty means absolutely nothing. Especially now when you see, even by the Goyim, Jeffrey Epstein or whatever, all these things, the minute they find, according to word, the moral du jour, is being breached on that Indian, crash and burn. Kal v'chomer, if you have Rabbanim, in Bekdusha, when they fall, no long ago there was a guy who committed suicide, two guys who committed suicide. They were found they committed suicide. They could not live with it. There's the most bitter thing that there is. People think, maybe, especially during midlife crisis, my wife is not appealing to me anymore, or whatever it is, or my husband is not appealing to me anymore. I will divorce him or her, and I will have a wonderful life. What wonderful life. What wonderful life. The first thing that you'll experience is loneliness, biting loneliness, cannibalistic loneliness that bites you on flesh. And then you get married, if you're lucky, you get remarried and discover that your second wife or your second husband is practically the same kind of person that the first one was. Only it's secondhand, second choice. Wasn't as good as the first one. Because, who wants secondhand, So his wife, the wife of your second husband didn't want him, or he didn't want her. He thought that the grass is greener on the other side. You thought that the grass was greener on the other side if you'll divorce your husband and then you'll get married again. And look at you. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get somebody that doesn't come to the ankles of your first husband. That's right. Shem Yerachem. It's the yearness people have. The Indian is if a person has bitochen Kodesh Baruch Hu B'ezrat Hashem, everything will come. Everything will come to the way it's supposed to do and supposed to be. So in of Mitzrayim is bitochen Kodesh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu says, that's what I remember to you. I remember to you, you walking after me in the desert, Be'eretz Lo Zruah, in unsowed land. You know, there's nothing grew there. What are we going to eat? No, there's nothing to eat. They didn't even have time to prepare, enough provisions for themselves. Even the matzah, which is the whole thing is just unleavened bread. There's no time, to leaven the bread. They had to go out of Mitzrayim because they were chased away. It's all bitochon b'kedusha. What are you going to eat? Kodesh Baruch Hu will give you. How am I going to be with my family? With this and this, Kodesh Baruch Hu will give you. How will it sustain? Yeah, Avi Statman will bring B'nat Hashem potato chips. We'll have enough. We'll have to eat. No. Hashem. Listen, the Kodesh Baruch Hu will give Mam in the Shamayim. The Baruch Hu will give Parnasa to everybody. By the way, I just want to finish it off by a funny story about Reb Shmuel Shapir. No, Reb Shapir. Rabbi Moharan Nachman's, the Biur Likutim, the Rebbe of Reb Lev Yitzchok, the son of Reb Nachman Tulchiner, the Talmud of Reb Nosson, one of the greatest tzaddikim of 130 years ago, something like that. So he used to work in Yerushalayim as a schlepper of benches from the shul to whatever simchas, chasanas, whatever, nobody had benches. Only the shuls had benches. So he was a schlepper. He was a porter, and he would take the benches on his back and he would carry them to the place of the chasana, simcha, whatever it is, bring it back. That was his parnasa. Okay. One day he came home and he didn't have enough. His wife became upset. She threw him out of the house. So he went to the house of her mayor Anshin, Zatzal Yivoha, and Rasha was what? Nachman's. It's like you're talking like a God Lador, whatever it is. So I told him, if Avram Avinu would have not have brought Parnasa home, his Sarah Mena would have thrown him out. That's it, right? Oh yeah. Hashem Kadosh Baruch Hu Hashem will give us all bitochen and nachas and kedusha. Baruch Hashem will learn the word of Rabbeinu. Every single word here is a diamond that will stay with us, B'ezrat Hashem, in this lifetime, and after 120 years, Olam Hazeh, Olam Habo, and will be with us, B'ezrat Hashem, in after Tchias HaMeisim and the Great Judgment Day. Every single word we'll learn here is a treasure that will keep us forever. You get to know it to everybody. Chag Kosher V'Sameach to everyone. B'ezrat Hashem, good Shabbos. B'ezrat Hashem, Bli Neder. The next year is what's a Shabbos? 9:00. Sipur Tzadikim, Sichas Haran. We'll have some good time. Kol Tov and Agit Noyed.